Thanks for joining us for CBN News Today. I'm Charlene Aaron.
And I'm Ephraim Graham. The country is mourning the death of actor and comedic genius Robin Williams. Williams died in an apparent suicide Monday. As Heather Sells reports, the Hollywood icon had been struggling with severe depression.
Robin Williams burst onto the scene in the late 1970s as an alien in Mork and Mindy. He would go on to become an Oscar-winning actor that could make us all smile and cry. Over the years, Williams starred in countless hit films like the now classic Mrs. Doubtfire. Overnight in San Francisco, fans laid flowers at the original home where the movie was shot. Williams was perhaps known more for his comedic talents, with experts calling him a comic genius.
Robin was one of the greatest comedians of all time.
But he was also known for his range and depth on stage and on screen, like in the movie Good Will Hunting, where he won an Oscar for playing psychologist Sean McGuire. Fans say he changed their lives.
When I was 12 years old, I saw Mrs. Doubtfire for the first time, and that range and his energy was just electric. And I said, that's what I have to do for a living.
He made everybody laugh. One of the very best. He brought so many smiles to so many people.
Everybody in America tonight, I'm sure, felt like, wow, you got punched in the stomach.
The president described Williams as one of a kind. In his personal life, Williams struggled with depression and addiction and talked openly about it over the years. Just last month, he announced he was returning to a 12-step treatment program. Regent University counseling professor Sherry Todd told CBN News, when a person stops an addictive behavior and there are symptoms of traumatic stress, the risk of suicide increases significantly. Williams leaves behind his wife and 3 children and something for the fans, 4 upcoming movies. Heather Sells, CBN News.
Political turmoil is adding to the mounting challenges facing Iraq. The country's new president announced his choice to replace divisive Prime Minister Nouri al-Maliki Monday. But al-Maliki isn't stepping aside. Instead, he's trying to undermine President Fawad Massoum, accusing him of violating Iraq's constitution. The U.S. is urging Iraq's leaders to quickly form an inclusive government so they can start addressing the crisis in the north. Meanwhile, the U.S. is delivering more food, water, and other aid to thousands of refugees forced from their homes in the latest wave of violence.
Despite some recent setbacks, the Kurdish military known as the Peshmerga is still the best fighting force facing the terror group ISIS in Iraq. As Chris Mitchell reports, they may not be outmanned, but many times they are outgunned.
After ISIS defeated the Peshmerga in a couple of battles, some wondered if the Kurdish military was up to the challenge. This is the front lines of the war between ISIS and the Peshmerga. Last night there was a 2-hour battle here. ISIS came with a large convoy and heavy artillery, but this time the Peshmerga prevailed. Signs of the battle litter the town. This destroyed vehicle lobbed shells at the Peshmerga. Across the road, ISIS left behind this dead fighter. The victory at Makmur encouraged the Peshmerga, but they still face an enemy with a robust arsenal, much of it captured Iraqi equipment supplied by the U.S.
Unfortunately, we have been outgunned by their access to resources because they are a rich terrorist group. We need heavy weaponry, armor, ammunition, because they have access to massive amounts of resources like bulletproof vehicles, heavy weaponry, armor, which we lack.
Peshmerga commanders say because ISIS has heavy weapons, they can keep their distance. They say if they had the same kind of weapons, it would be a different war. One thing is clear, U.S. airstrikes have made a difference on the battlefield and in the diplomatic arena.
Of course, it's good for us. When a superpower like the United States intervenes, the balance of power goes in our favor. But also, it's very important for us that it's the first time recently that the U.S. has intervened and said, I am going to protect my ally.
But Peshmerga commanders told CBN News they need more help.
The weapons that we have, ISIS has the same stuff, but even better ones. We need heavy weaponry, artillery, and Humvees. These are all very important to us.
One senior Kurdish official said if the Peshmerga had been better armed, much of the current crisis and potential genocide might have been avoided. Commanders in the field say if they have the weapons, they're more than up to the task.
The Peshmerga are fighting for the sake of their land, their people, and their rights. So they are encouraged, and they are ready to confront the enemy wherever they are.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Makmur, Kurdistan.
Secretary of State John Kerry says a photo of a 7-year-old boy proudly holding the severed head of a Syrian soldier could actually pose a threat to the world's future. The Australian boy's terrorist father posted the image to Twitter, captioned, quote, "That's my boy." Kerry described the photo as, quote, "disturbing and grotesque." He said that child should be playing with other kids, not holding a severed head and out in the field of combat. Australian Foreign Minister Julie Bishop says the image is truly shocking. She says she fears children like him will return to Australia as hardened homegrown terrorists and seek to continue their work in Australia. Kerry has proposed that the U.S. and Australia take the issue to the UN so countries can protect themselves from fighters coming back from Syria and Iraq.
A humanitarian convoy from Russia will not be allowed to cross the border into Ukraine. One day after agreeing on a humanitarian relief mission, Russia is sending a convoy of 280 Russian trucks to eastern Ukraine. But the International Red Cross says it has no information on what the trucks are carrying or where they're going. That's raising concerns Russia may use the convoy to smuggle in troops and weapons. Both the U.S. and Ukraine stated any Russian intervention in Ukraine without the formal express consent and authorization would be unacceptable and a violation of international law.
With Israel and Hamas holding to a fragile ceasefire, some in Israel argue it's time to step up the economic war against the terror group. This week in New York, the Jordan-based bank PLC is on trial for funding terrorism. Victims' families sued the bank for violating the U.S. Anti-Terrorism Act. Civil trials are also pending against the Bank of China, which funneled millions of dollars to Hamas when most other banks cut off funding. In a Jerusalem Post article called "Starve Hamas Economically," one attorney writes the only way to completely eradicating Hamas is through a critical blow to its financing. Operation Protective Edge must enter the economic arena.
Christians are among the strongest backers of Israel. Recently, a high-profile visit by Christian leaders from the U.S. demonstrated that support. Here's Chris Mitchell again from Ashkelon.
Christians United for Israel, known as CUFI, brought a group of 50 pastors and Christian leaders from every state in the nation and the District of Columbia to Israel.
To come and simply tell to the people of Israel, we support you, we understand you. There are still people in America who can distinguish morally between Israel and Hamas, and there's still people in America who appreciate what Israel's doing, not just to protect their own citizens, but we believe deeply when Israel battles Hamas, they're also protecting us in America.
They visited Sderot, the town where more rockets have fallen than any other in Israel. They found Israelis profoundly grateful for the visit. Bible teacher Billy Brim said the appreciation began on the flight over from a flight attendant.
She said, "Oh, thank you for what you're doing for our country." And that's what they say everywhere. Thank you for this. Thank you for standing with us. Thank you for coming. It's just amazing.
The visit provided a frontlines look at Israel's war against Hamas, including Israel's now famous anti-missile system, the Iron Dome. They also got a front row look into Gaza. For many, it was eye-opening.
To be here, to stand, to look over, it really embeds it deep within your soul as to the dangers Israel faces every day of her life.
Pastor Jay Bailey plans to bring a message back home.
I'm going to let them know that I looked over at the place where those rockets originate from, stood on the observation point in which tunnels are being developed and dug underneath, and this community here, Sderot, the dangers these precious people face every day of their lives.
They also expressed concern for the people of Gaza.
One thing that's really concerned all of us that's on this trip is the loss of life of innocent children and innocent civilians who are caught in this battle. We're praying for the cessation of violence. We're praying for the peace of Jerusalem. We're praying for the safety of the Palestinian people, the regular citizens. But we are praying that this nation will be wise enough to defend herself.
Yet they believe Israel's war against Hamas is just, an enemy of both Jews and Christians.
After the Jews come the Christians. After the Saturday people come the Sunday people. It's the same extremist theology that drives Al-Qaeda. These are people determined to kill Jews and Christians, Americans and Israelis.
Chris Mitchell, CBN News, Ashkelon.
Clashes continue between police and protesters outside St. Louis over the death of an unarmed teenager. 18-year-old Michael Brown was shot Saturday after a scuffle with a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. Monday night, police in riot gear fired tear gas and rubber bullets into a crowd of protesters after they threw rocks at them. Over the weekend, angry mobs kicked in windows, looted stores, and smashed police cars. Vandals even spray painted "The only good cop is a dead cop." Witnesses say Brown had his hands raised when the officer approached with his weapon drawn and fired repeatedly. But police say that someone involved in the incident tried to grab the officer's gun. The FBI has opened an investigation into Brown's death.
A federal judge has ruled the Ten Commandments monument in New Mexico has to go. The American Civil Liberties Union filed a lawsuit on behalf of 2 Bloomfield residents. They said the monument in front of City Hall violated their religious freedom. The judge ruled the monument has the principal effect of endorsing religion and ordered it removed by September 10th. City attorneys argued the monument was funded by private individuals under a resolution that allows people to erect historical monuments of their choosing.
Coming up, the world watches in horror as Islamic terrorists hold hundreds of girls hostage. We've got an inside story on how Boko Haram is targeting Christians in Nigeria. An Egyptian court has dissolved the Muslim Brotherhood political party and ordered its assets liquidated, the state news agency reports. The Brotherhood itself has already been banned. Many party leaders are accused, and some have been convicted of murder and inciting violence. The court's decision is part of a wider crackdown against the Brotherhood and its members. Thousands have been put in jail and many sentenced to death on charges of inciting violence.
The Nigerian army is fighting to retake a town captured by Boko Haram terrorists. World Watch Monitor reports more than 100 people died when the radical Islamic group conquered Gwoza last week. They killed at least 1 church leader and burned down churches, homes, businesses, and government buildings. Boko Haram has intensified its campaign against churches in recent weeks. July 30th, it destroyed at least 5 churches in a mostly Christian enclave of Borno State. A few days earlier, a female suicide bomber attacked St. Charles Catholic Church in Kano State.
Well, it's been 120 days, that's 4 months, and 219 schoolgirls are still being held hostage by Boko Haram. The kidnapping put the spotlight on the radical Islamic terrorist group. For more than 5 years, Boko Haram has committed countless atrocities against Christians and others. Gary Lane has the story of one Nigerian schoolgirl who overcame a murderous assault on her family.
Deborah Wakai Peters played with some of the 276 schoolgirls kidnapped by the Boko Haram terror group. She says her mother once attended the same school in Chibok, where the girls were kidnapped. Deborah has experienced her own horrors at the hands of Boko Haram. One night just before Christmas 2011, she watched as 3 gunmen entered her house and killed her father after he refused to deny Christ. They also killed her 14-year-old brother Caleb.
So they go ahead and shoot him twice in his chest. So he fall. When he fall, he started like moving. So they go ahead and shoot him again, one in his mouth, and then he fall down and died. So I was in shock. I didn't know what was happening.
Deborah's mother, a former Muslim, was away from home at the time. Shortly after, American children of 9/11 victims invited Deborah to attend a camp in the U.S. While she survived a terror attack, Deborah could not make it through the bureaucracy of the State Department. It twice denied her visa requests.
And the reason she was denied a visa was they said to her, you can't make this stuff up. They said to her, you don't have family ties. So they essentially re-traumatized a girl whose family was exterminated by terrorists.
When Deborah talked to CBN News, she made it clear why Boko Haram targeted her family.
In the Quran, they say that any Muslim woman that turned to Christian, her punishment is death. So they did all this because of her.
So you think if your mother had been home, They would have killed her as well?
Yes, because they were targeting her. Even now, they are looking for her. If they see her, they will kill her.
Why did they kill your father?
Because number one, he's a pastor, and the second one, he married my mother. When he married my mother, so he turned my mother to Christian, so they were angry with him.
Now, had your father led other Muslims to Christianity?
Yeah.
Ogebe suggests world leaders take a more aggressive response in order to stop these attacks.
This is a make or break time for Boko Haram. If the world cannot unite and snuff them out now, they now know what will get our attention, and they're going to keep, putting it in our faces.
As for Deborah, she finally received a student visa and now attends school in the U.S. So what does she want people to learn from her story?
They will understand, and they will know more and more of what God said, and they will understand what it means to stand strong.
A 15-year-old Nigerian student standing strong in victory over Islamic terrorism and praying that her Christian friends will soon be reunited with their families. Gary Lane, CBN News.
Up next, a terrorist army of 10,000 jihadists. And if you think they're just planning to stay in Iraq, think again. Nearly 13 years after 9/11 and 2 wars later, the threat from Islamic terrorism against America is far from over.
That's right. And as we've shown you in our coverage of the Islamic State in Iraq, the threat is still growing. Eric Stakelbeck brings us this alarming look at today's leading terrorists and their plans for the United States.
Before Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi became what many consider the world's most powerful terrorist, he was in U.S. custody. U.S. forces released al-Baghdadi from an Iraqi prison in 2009 after 4 years in captivity. His reported parting words to American troops, "I'll see you guys in New York." Al-Baghdadi now leads a terrorist army of some 10,000 jihadists. Known variously as ISIS or the Islamic State, they've conquered a vast amount of territory in Iraq and Syria, and their threats to attack America have not gone unnoticed.
You will have a hard time finding any senior U.S. counterterrorism or intelligence official who won't say right now that the Islamic State or ISIS is the biggest threat that we're facing in the moment.
Former Treasury Department and FBI analyst Matthew Levitt says the large influx of Western Muslims into ISIS's ranks from places like Britain, France, and Denmark poses a unique danger. According to some estimates, up to 3,000 Western Muslims have traveled to Syria to join the jihad.
They are recruiting a very large number and attracting a very large number of foreigners, including Americans. At least 100 or so have gone to fight, some with ISIS, some with Jabhat al-Nusra in Syria, and also Europeans. And in many of the Europeans who are being recruited are from European countries that have visa waiver programs with the United States.
The fear is that these holy warriors will use their Western passports to return home and carry out attacks. One French Muslim who had fought alongside ISIS did exactly that back in May when he killed 4 Jews at a Brussels museum. Moner Mohammed Abu Salah, a U.S. citizen and Florida resident, took a different route. He blew himself up in a suicide attack against the Syrian military earlier this year.
What makes it such a threat to us is its intent and its capability to carry out attacks abroad, the fact that it has recruited and drawn into it so many foreigners, some of whom have already gone home, and some of their leaders, including al-Baghdadi, have articulated an intent to carry out attacks abroad, possibly even in the United States.
In one recent video, ISIS called America the protector of the cross and warned that the United States shall soon be forced to be in direct confrontation by the permission of Allah, and the sons of Islam have been waiting for this day. Al-Baghdadi's claim to lead the world's Muslims has not sat well with al-Qaeda. Long considered the world's most notorious terror group, al-Qaeda had a bitter falling out with ISIS earlier this year.
I still think that al-Qaeda is the bigger threat because al-Qaeda still has a much more capable, deeper international network.
Thomas Jocelyn is with the Foundation for Defense of Democracies in Washington.
The A-listers in the jihadi world have remained with al-Qaeda, and that's a big cause of concern.
Al-Qaeda and its allies continue to expand their reach. The group now covers more territory than it did on 9/11, from Pakistan to Somalia to Sinai, Libya, and beyond. The al-Qaeda branch that most worries U.S. intelligence officials is based in Yemen. It's been behind several plots against the U.S. homeland and has also recruited a number of Westerners.
There are a small number of people in Yemen and Saudi Arabia who are making very ingenious bombs and very much have the intent to try and deploy them directed at the United States.
Although al-Qaeda and ISIS may now be rivals, there has been no such breach in the relationship between the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism and its most lethal proxy.
Iran and Hezbollah have been involved in so many plots over the past few years that, according to the former director of the National Counterterrorism Center, there have been times when the daily threats that are being briefed to the president are not all or primarily about al-Qaeda or ISIS. The top 1 or 2 or sometimes even 3 have been Iranian and Hezbollah plots.
Levitt wrote a book called Hezbollah that details the group's international footprint. In recent years, Hezbollah and Iran have attempted or carried out attacks against Jewish targets in Bulgaria, India, Thailand, and elsewhere. U.S. authorities stopped a 2011 Iranian plot to blow up the Saudi and Israeli embassies in Washington, meaning Iran and Hezbollah have yet to strike on American soil, although they have killed U.S. citizens abroad.
It's very hard to say if and when they decide that they want to target Western interests. That they have the capability is very, very clear.
That capability would only increase if and when Iran acquires nuclear weapons, an achievement that would embolden Iran's radical leaders and leave the world an even more dangerous place. Eric Stakelbeck, CBN News, Washington.
Finally today, CBN is helping provide clean water for people around the world.
Thanks to the generosity of our partners, last month, CBN completed its 500th well for 2014, one in a remote village in Rajasthan, India, where fetching water used to take several hours, and even then the water was contaminated. A local couple says now they have more time to earn extra income, and the husband no longer has to work late nights away from his family. So far this year, wells have been built to provide clean water for more than 200,000 people.
That's going to do it for CBN News Today.
Make it a terrific Tuesday. We'll see you right back here tomorrow.